welcome to the Recovery Daily Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Abbasi. I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic and stroke survivor. Today, I wanted to talk about relapse. The meeting in the morning, the topics were slips, which I don't like. I don't like that word, slips. And living one day at a time. So really, all of it came together for me as one. I feel like the word slip is a downplay, minimizes what is actually happening, takes away its significance, because if we drink, it's a relapse. If we keep drinking, then I don't know that we were ever really sober, because sobriety is more than just not picking up a drink. So I want to unpack that and then kind of talk about living one day at a time and what that means for me. So what's the difference to me between a slip and a relapse? Okay, well, in early sobriety for me, when I heard the phrase one day at a time, constantly, I heard this and I just didn't understand it. I didn't understand how to do that. How do you stay in the moment and not fast forward to all the what ifs? Because I lived in the what ifs. I don't think I was living in the present at all. In my mind, I was thinking, when it came to not drinking, that I was going to have to live the rest of my life not drinking, but yet feeling all of the same pain that I was drinking to relieve. And this was physical pain, emotional pain, and spiritual pain. What physical pain? I would say it was related to my extreme anxiety, because it was like I would have stomach aches like that, if something happened. I remember, I don't like to talk about my ex-husband in a negative way or anything like that, but this is just an example, okay? And I think it's kind of humorous. Today, it's humorous. It wasn't humorous when it was happening. When I was working, if the phone would ring at work, my stomach would start hurting like that, because I thought it was him. And I had a feeling he was going to be talking about something that stresses me out. Money, mostly money. And I couldn't handle it while I was working. So that's what I mean by physical pain. I had it, and it was related to this extreme anxiety. The emotional pain, the things that I couldn't let go of. I thought, well, the only way that I knew how to let something go was to drink it away, to pour so much alcohol inside of me that I didn't have the wherewithal to even put together thoughts about something that was really difficult. And then spiritually, forget about it. I didn't even know what that meant. I thought spirituality was going to church, and that is completely not even close to what spirituality is. So I wasn't able to grasp how that pain would disintegrate one day at a time as long as I didn't drink. I didn't even know that was the plan. All I knew or understood the plan to be was that I couldn't drink. I really didn't. If I did get a summary of what AA was supposed to do for me, I don't remember what that was, because all I understood of it was I go into these meetings and it helps me to not pick up a drink. And it didn't work. I went for, I don't know, about 4 years or so, I think. That seems like it's a bit long, but I went for years before I actually went to detox and it wasn't working. I thought that if I went to meetings, somehow this urge to drink would magically disappear, and it never did for me. So I thought that um, nothing changes except for the drinking. And that didn't make any sense to me. I couldn't do it. All I could think was, I can't do this. I can't live the rest of my life this way. Um, so after 2 months of sobriety, I've talked about it before, I drank again. And I, so here's where the word slip comes in. I don't think of it as a slip. Even if you just drink one night and come back, that's not a slip. You relapse. There's something more going on inside you that started before you drank. And that is the relapse, the emotional relapse, the spiritual relapse. That starts, I believe, before the physical relapse. Um, that word slip just feels way too soft for what is actually happening. I thought that drinking relieved me from my suffering, but it only deepened my despair. And if I, that despair is pre-existing before I pick up a drink. And that relapse begins long before I actually drink. And so it wasn't just that one time. There were many times that I was not going to drink and I drank. I remember going to my brother's in Reno when he lived in Reno. He was my boss for quite some time. And so I would go visit him 4 times a year, every quarter. And it got pretty messy with my drinking while flying and stuff. But I remember going there and saying, like, after I had some messiness with traveling, I decided I'm not going to drink this time while I travel. So I didn't drink, and I got there. I wasn't planning on drinking, but then my brother had a drink after work one night, and I thought, well, if you're going to drink, I'm going to drink. And so I had a drink too. And that was it. That wasn't a slip either. I wouldn't even call that a relapse because I don't even think that I was sober. I was just white knuckling it, trying not to pick up a drink. And I did, Um, so I believe that slip shouldn't even be used. I think, let's see, it's Tuesday. Whatever book we read out of this morning in our meeting, it was How Bill Sees It. And the topic was slips. So it's very much integrated into that book, the word slips. So I don't know where that started, but not a big fan. I think I've said that 3 different ways. So I'm pretty adamant about it. So one thing that I've learned from working the steps with my sponsors that I've had over time and going to meetings is that the relapse doesn't, and I heard this morning, the relapse doesn't happen the moment you take the drink. It happens far earlier across different areas of your life. Emotionally, I'm not, if I'm, let's say I'm about to relapse, okay? Emotionally, I'm going to relapse first. And the way that that would look like for me, is I'm not pausing, I'm reacting, period. I'm not thinking through. I'm not thinking about what my emotions are and naming them and talking about them with my sponsor, going to meetings and sharing about them. Um, I'm just feeling them, stuffing them, um, not taking action to do something about them. And mentally, I feel that a relapse would look like, for me, I lose hope. I start feeling hopeless. And that's why at the beginning of this year, I was so scared about my sobriety. I felt like my sobriety was at risk because I had been thinking about muscle relaxers. It's all I wanted. I wanted a muscle relaxer. I mean, obsessively, I was thinking about muscle relaxers. Um, I can't say that I was really thinking about a drink might fix me. I was thinking about muscle relaxers because I just couldn't take the pain in my head anymore. And so, because of the feeling of the pain, I felt like muscle relaxers would do the trick and take it away. If I were to take a muscle relaxer, I'm quite certain drinking would follow. I'm quite certain of that, because anything that feels good to me is something I need to stay away from. I was just talking to I was just talking to my husband about that last night. Um, these Nutty Buddies, you know what I'm talking about? They're like vanilla wafers that have like a peanut butter concoction in between them, and then they're wrapped in milk chocolate. They're like by Little Debbie, I think. Well, these things are amazing. They're one of my favorite things in the world. So, um, we got some at the store this past weekend. And as I eat them, as I eat it, I actually close my eyes because it tastes so good. I just want to savor every second with this Nutty Buddy. And what was my point? I'm not even sure. Let me think about it. I don't know. I'm so into it. Oh, that's what it was. That I love them so much that I'm almost afraid to buy them from the store because I just want more. Every time I have one, I just want more. So when they're done, like I'll probably finish them by, I don't know, maybe Friday. My kids are coming in starting on Thursday. So I don't know if they'll last that long, but when they're done, I think about how much I want to buy another box. And that doesn't feel good to me. I don't like feeling like I need something. So my husband is also very familiar with the fact that I don't like to go to Dunkin' Donuts to get donuts, and specifically glazed or Krispy Kreme from the store glazed. And the reason why is because they are so good that it scares me. Isn't it? I don't know if that's weird or not, but I feel like things that feel good, I need to stay away from. And this was, I don't know, yeah, I definitely felt this way before I got sober because I remember when I was drinking, I would tell him that because he lived my husband lived by a donut shop where they actually make the donuts right in front of you, where they drop the dough into the oil. And then they had this machine that like flips the donut halfway through and it goes along the conveyor belt. So, and I was like, no, we can't go in there. He's like, why? And because I like them too much. And so he's like, okay. But it's true. And that's the case today. When I went and got my teeth cleaned at the periodontist, they said that they typically give the patient laughing gas. And the feeling that I had inside about the potential of having laughing gas was a huge red flag to me. And I immediately said, is there another way I can't have laughing gas? Because I wanted it, because it was going to feel good. When I got my colonoscopy, I've told you about, there is like a second before you go under with the anesthesia that it feels good. And the thing about that is that it doesn't scare me because there's nothing I can do about it. I have to do it in order to get a colonoscopy. And I'm not going to go running back for a colonoscopy just so I can feel that for a hot second. So anyway, that's kind of my thoughts around relapse, like what I feel inside that would make me potentially feel like I'm going to relapse. That's includes the physical part of it too. When we stop participating in the program, that's where that mental relapse begins. So maybe we stop reading the recovery materials. I remember when I first got sober, I was listening to the big book on my drive to and from West Virginia every day. Skipping meetings, not checking in with our sponsor very often. Those little cracks start to form when we disconnect from the sobriety community that helps us stay accountable. So, and then the spiritual aspect, when I don't take time to pray and meditate, I can feel a spiritual relapse beginning. It is so important to me that I practice this relationship with my concept of my own higher power every day. Because if I feel disconnected, then I feel alone, and I can't feel alone. In sobriety, feeling alone will make me drink. I know that. So I have to keep in touch, keep in constant contact with my higher power, with the serenity that I've worked so hard to achieve. I talked about it yesterday, like constantly keeping that communication channel open. So when good things happen in my life, I look up and I go, thanks. You know, when something makes me a little nervous, I may kind of close my eyes for a second and ground myself in my spirituality, in my concept of this serenity and this higher power. Like I beckon it almost, it's how I calm myself down now, centering myself in this environment, this spiritual environment that I've created for myself. Without that grounding, it becomes easier to turn back to old habits. So I need to continue to pray, meditate, get quiet, pause. And then emotionally, again, when we stop pausing to thoughtfully respond to situations, then we're reacting and we don't take deep breaths. I take deep breaths all day long. I had heard somewhere that the average person takes X number of deep breaths a day. And a lot of people don't even realize that they're doing it. But ever since I read that, I notice when I'm taking a deep breath. And um, what I read around that was something about when we feel tension building, that deep breath is a natural reaction that our body takes in order to relieve that tension. So I think that that's really interesting. I don't know if it's true. I don't remember where I read that, but I've noticed that it happens for me. Like I can feel like I'm overthinking something. And then to put a period at the end of that thought, I'll take a deep breath and let it go. And then I tend to shift my train of thought. It's interesting. Like pay attention to it and see if that's something that you do as well. So the deep breaths can be that gap between um, that building of tension and going over the threshold to anger or sadness that consumes us. And all of this can add up to making us pick up that drink. And it is the inevitable conclusion for me, rather than a choice that I can avoid. If I stay spiritually fit, emotionally fit, um, well, mentally fit, physically fit, then I have a choice not to drink today. If I let my guard down on any single one of those, then my choice begins to dwindle and it becomes not so much feeling like a choice, but an inevitable ending. And ending it would be for sure. Um, now that I have had more time living sober, I understand now what one day at a time means. It's not about, it's not that I'm living with the pain anymore, with unrelenting pain. It's living despite pain sometimes. It's living with the pain because pain is a part of living. That's what I'm trying to convey. And knowing that emotional pain is impermanent. The emotional, mental, and physical pain that I feel in certain really difficult situations will change as long as I continue to live in the principles of my program and recovery, then nothing is permanent. When I ignore it, like I was talking about yesterday, it takes residence in me. And if I let it take residence in me, it's putting me at risk for a drink, for a relapse. And this concept has been helpful not only to my sobriety, but my stroke recovery as well. There are days when the emotional pain in stroke recovery feels overwhelming. I mentioned the other day how I was walking Autumn and I thought, it's terrible to live like this. And that's a scary thought. That's a scary thought for me to have because I it puts me at risk for a drink. So I have to practice these principles in all of my affairs. So I know that I have continued to draw this parallel between sobriety and stroke recovery, um, But really, what I'm doing is practicing the principles of my sobriety program and all of my affairs, which is stroke recovery. It just seems like this event that happened in my life, the stroke, mimics that event of realizing that I'm an alcoholic. That's why it seems to parallel. It was like my recovery started again at day one. That's what it felt like when I had my stroke. So what I know though, because I have proof of it from sobriety, is that when I'm walking my dog and I think it's terrible to live like this, I know deep inside of me that that pain is not permanent. And I don't have to let it consume me. I have the tools to deal with that kind of thought, that kind of mentality, the emotions that come with that, and to take things moment by moment. Just because I felt that way that day when I was walking Autumn doesn't mean that I was going to feel that same way when I got back home. It's just that I felt that way at that moment. And it's really important for me to understand that a feeling like that isn't permanent. Because if I feel something and I think that that nothing's going to change, like I'm always going to feel like living like this sucks, um, then I will lose hope. And without hope, what do I have, you know? Um, but if I can think something negative like that and think, Rachel, it's fine that you feel that way right now. Because I do think of myself as my own daughter now. I think about that little girl that I used to be. And I think, what would I say to her if she said, it's terrible to live like this? I would be devastated to hear her say that. I would want to tell her it's okay to feel that way right now, but emotions are not permanent. And this too shall pass, like I hear in the program. Um, you can face the day without it ending with that same thought. Because even from moment to moment, we talk about living one day at a time. Some days it's one moment at a time. And I feel that way a lot lately, that I may be out for a walk and I'm having bad symptoms and I think it's terrible to live like this. But then I come inside and either make dinner or work on one of my crafts and my head subsides. And I think about how much fun it is to be able to have more time to work on projects and hobbies that I like. So one moment at a time. And I continue to observe that in my own recovery. And I want to share that because I think just knowing that when you're going through tough times is the only hope that you have sometimes, the mindset of I can feel this way right now, but I'm not going to feel this way forever can get us through hard times, hard moments. Um, Believing that the hard moment is not my whole life story. So the last point that I want to touch on is the importance of guarding serenity. And I've talked about that for several days lately, we work hard to surface this joy and this peace in our lives. And it's so easy to let our own negative thoughts, even just for a moment, like I did, to disturb that peace. And I think that really has to do with the willingness and the faith that, again, if I take action on these thoughts, if I feel these feelings, name them, and then tell somebody about it, that that I can move forward and leave it where it was in my life's timeline, leave that emotion where it was, and keep moving forward. So so that's what I got today for you. And I think it's important stuff, it's, for me, to drink is to die. And there's nothing more important than that. And that's why I don't want to diminish the idea of a relapse by calling it a slip, because slipping and falling can be deadly. And that's, if we compare drinking to just walking, we can slip and hit our head and die, right? Even though slipping is usually correlated with whoops, whoops. But it can be deadly. And I just don't, I don't want to take away from how truly critical it is to stay away from even one drink, because for me, I would lose everything if I even took one drink. So thanks for joining me today on this episode of Recovery Daily Podcast. I will talk to you tomorrow.